Dr. Jazz.
Thanks for finding the time, Mike, that we finally did it now. Like,
Yes, thank you for being accommodating for schedules and stuff.
yeah, no, I have you on so many records, so I was like, shit, I'll drop you a line and let's see if we can make it. So, and
I'm glad you did.
yeah,
Happy to be here.
thank you. I'll just jump in. I'll start this talk by asking you, like, what's happening on the band leading department with you? And I know the last one was Trust, and I love that record. And have you been preparing something new? I know I saw that video on YouTube from Baked Potato, which was like last fall or something.
We're playing, I believe, on the 19th of October, which is in about 3 weeks, with Jimmy Johnson, Chad Wackerman, and Mitchell Foreman is going to play keys. And that should be great. Should be really fun. I've been preparing. I have a bunch of new tunes to spring on the guys, and that's always, oh, good, more math.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But I'm trying to bring in some new stuff because it's nice to keep pushing.
Yeah.
And I believe that I'm going to try to put together another record for Blue Canoe label,
yep,
which is where the Trust record came out. And I've been not so much writing as assembling older pieces that I have. I have a lot of odds and ends, kind of, little sections that I'm pairing up and trying out. Does this fit with this one? Does, and assembling some new music.
How does this process work with you when writing? I mean, I listened today again to Trust, like Reindeer Glue, and it starts like, I think with Jimmy Earl's like bass solo basically, and and Trust, and like there's so much happening in your tunes, like rhythmically especially, I think. And what's your process when writing music? I mean, how do you begin?
Well, that tune in particular was I do a lot of work with a looper at home, like just playing, and and you hit on something good and you can capture it, and maybe it's not exactly what it becomes later, but you get the idea. And so I would have, section would I'd have that on a loop and I'd listen to it a bit, and then later I'd put together these other things and think, well, these tempos and keys work well together. These loops like each other, and they would sort of assemble themselves, just from listening to things and trying to think of, well, okay, this is pretty dense. It needs to open up. It needs to be more spacious or melodic, or depending on what the piece is. And so it's like having a lot of like a wide palette. Like you have a lot of directions you could go. And some of my favorites, I mean, one of my all-time favorites, Frank Zappa, was like he was constantly using old themes. He'd constantly pull up a theme from 20 years ago and rework it and have it, So the idea of changing it up, I mean, that's almost to my detriment, is that if I have too many choices and too much time, I will, get lost in the spiral, and I'll be listening to something, and I think, well, what else could happen here? You could also have this melody like this that goes, and then I'll listen to that for a while and go, yeah, that's nice. And you know what else could happen? You could have these chords going that way, and pretty soon it turns into an epic. So I'm trying to limit those epics, because sometimes I feel like some of the songs, some people might have, there's almost too much information,
Yeah.
And I'm that way too. I mean, there's music I listen to that has like a lot of activity, And there's music that I love that is very focused on one event, you know.
Yep.
So, but I've always liked a lot of different kinds of music. So I think that's, and plus, what can they do? Like, sue me. What can you do? I mean, it's like,
Exactly.
don't like it. Oh, no.
You like this aspect of band leading? I mean, you know, you have Jimmy Johnson, let's say on bass, you know, one of the greats, and Chad Wackerman on drums, you know, who played with Zappa, and both of them played with Alan Holdsworth.
Yes, and
You
I've
being a
been playing with
guitarist.
both of them
Yeah,
for decades, you know, in other things.
yeah,
I
exactly.
played with Chad playing the Zappa music with several versions of Zappa alumni. Originally, the Grandmothers, Don Preston,
Hmm.
and Jimmy Carl Black even did one of the tours.
Really?
Jimmy
Oh,
Carl
man,
Black, yeah.
that's amazing.
So there was that, and then there was a version of band from Utopia with three horns for a while with Bruce Fowler.
Yeah.
And Tom Fowler, and then the scaled down versions. In fact, I'm playing with them at Halloween. We're going to do 3 nights here in town with Jamie Kime, great guitar player who works with them a lot, and I are going to split the horn parts. There are no horns, so we're taking
The horns.
on the heavy lifting for those.
Oh man, okay.
It should be fun because we both love the music and respect it, so it'll be a creative endeavor.
Yeah. You mentioned Zappa. I mean, was he one of the reasons why you started playing, let's say, improvised music, or like how did you get into the music you play now, or like what was your main impetus that you said like, shit, I want to investigate this area more, like, which is, I don't know how we should call it.
I grew up in South Dakota where
Ah,
there's a lot of cows and corn, and but the music on the radio, I mean, it was like, you know, Motown. My father had a band, and his piano player was always turning me on to you know, like Miles Davis, Bitches Brew,
yeah.
stuff like that. I was playing in orchestra, playing string bass in orchestra, so I was hearing a lot of classical music. So there was a lot of music, but I remember very clearly the day my brother gave me Uncle Meat, and I'd been listening to all kinds of different music, you know, for a while and playing. And Uncle Meat came along, and I was like, "Ooh, there's something different out there." And I thought a lot of it was just improvised. I did not find out too much later that it was mostly written
out, yeah.
or improvised sections, but a lot of the music was, you know, meticulously written down with little dots, you know. And so it was another thing that it was just drew me in, and I thought, this is a whole other thing that I love. You know, it was a really rich time for music because you had, you know, I mean, yeah, it's unbelievable. You got like the Mahavishnu Orchestra and Bitches Brew and Hendrix, and the Beatles were still, you know, I mean, I was in the tail end of it, but that material, here we are still listening to it, you know, 75 years later, or
Crazy, yeah.
whatever it is. And so I was always interested in things that would catch my ear, you know, and I think some things that made me want to play had a certain mystery. There was a mysterious thing about them. Like a lot of the music I would hear of the rock bands, I could tell what they were doing. I couldn't do it. I couldn't play it, but I could hear what they were doing. And then I would hear something like on Bitches Brew and go, I have no idea what they're doing. Or Zappa, I go, I have no idea what they're doing, and it's killing me. And it's fantastic, which like just made me want to learn, like, how do I even get to where I can appreciate this music? You know, I loved it. Not so much about appreciate it, but to kind of understand what's going on.
Yeah. Did you then like study jazz, or did you just like transcribe, listen to stuff, or how did you learn the language?
I did a little, not school, but I had a lot of books. I would order books from, there were some great method books. You know, George Van Epps had a great book. There was a book out of Berkeley, David Baker, Lydian Chromatic Concept. book that I liked a lot, the Nicholas Slanimsky, The Sword
Yeah, yeah.
Gales, that one. And like I said, I was playing classical music, so I got some classical guitar stuff too. And I was playing bass mostly with my father, and who was a trumpet player, and he had a small band, and we played. But I was playing mostly bass at that time. I was playing guitar with my friends, but I was working as a bass player, so my bass playing was stronger in a lot of ways than my guitar playing. And I switched over to playing more guitar probably at about, I don't know, 19.
Oh, wow, quite late. Okay, interesting.
And I still love playing bass. I've got a couple here. I love playing it, and it's like the most powerful guy in the group, the bass player.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
you can play all the C chords you want. If he plays an A flat, you know, it's now a major seven.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
a flat, you know,
Augmented, you have a
it's no longer a C chord, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's great. I really grew to appreciate not only the power of it, but I learned so much about harmony, about the structure of music and how things were put together from playing bass, because you really get to understand why it's so different when you play the third of the chord or an alternate, or you just change the time up. You change the time up and everything changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Like, did you then immediately from South Dakota move to the West Coast, to Los Angeles, or?
I moved first to Colorado.
Okay.
When I got out of high school, I went, my older brother, Mark, was a great jazz bass player, and he had been in Texas, North Texas State, but he'd spent some time in Colorado, and he knew a few people there. And so when I got out, was looking at possibly a college, the colleges in Dakota had the music departments were not even, it was like, this is great if you want to be a music teacher, but
Yeah, yeah.
But my brother convinced me that since you know what you want to work on, you should move to a city and find great players and, study because you're ahead of the game because you know what you want to do. That's really a big plus. So I went to Colorado first, and there was a really thriving music scene there. I mean, people just wanted to play. You could play just going around and jamming and sitting in and maybe a gig here and there. You could play 8-9 hours a day. And we did. And I met a lot of great people there. I met and played with Larry Corea a bunch. Robin Ford gave me information. He was moving to Boulder as I was moving to LA. And he gave me the number of some of the guys in LA Express. With Joni Mitchell,
Sure. Yeah, of course.
George Harrison, all this stuff, and which led to all kinds of stuff. And I also met in Colorado. I met at one of my few guitar lessons that I took from a guy named Dale Bruning. I met Bill Frisell.
Oh man, really?
He was waiting to go in, and I was coming out, and somehow we ended up talking and connecting, and we did a lot of playing. Back
really? With Bill? Oh man, he's one of my favorites, man. It's like,
oh yeah, he's like got the touch. He's got the gold touch.
Yeah.
But and so we'd get together at my house in Boulder, which was and when you two guys sit around and you just start playing songs and you just play and you chase each other around kind of on to this song and over here and all this Gary Burton material and various stands. Just songs, and you play for a little while, and you look at the clock, and 5 hours had gone by because it was like we just really hit it off musically and did a lot of playing there. In fact, he gave me a ride back to South Dakota to visit my family on his way to Boston. And he was when he was moving to Boston for the first time. So he's been really, a source of great support, and
that's amazing.
He's a great guy and an incredible musician.
Yeah, it's like the touch. Yeah, I remember, G chord, he plays it. And I remember the first time I saw him live, and I think he plays really like virtually a G major chord on one tune. And it sounded like, man, And I came home, I played the same chord. I was like, nah. It's just, the touch, like you said,
Well,
incredible.
I think he appreciates things too. He's not. He was one of the a guy who was like when everyone was going scoodly doodly doodly this scoodly doodly stuff, and he's not doing that. He was
Yeah,
like
exactly.
and then the material as he started doing more of the. It's too many. There's so many directions he's taken, but he has a real appreciation and love of musics, which I think is everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then I moved to Colorado. I moved to California. I came out to California to do an album with the Fowler brothers, who had all been working with Frank Zappa. And we had a band, this killer band, a 9-piece band with Chester Thompson from Weather Report. Who's also doing Zappa. And Stu Goldberg, who later was working with Mahavishnu Orchestra, and the Five Horns, including Albert Wing, this insane Chinese tenor player, and we did an album that was produced by Oliver Nelson at the studio, and it was like one day. Went in and did the whole album in a day, and afterwards we were hanging out and went to a club, and I saw a guy named Dan Sawyer playing. He was playing with. Accompanying this singer, and he was doing this Lenny Bro harmonic stuff, and I blew my mind. It was like, first of all, I couldn't tell what he was. I kept asking him during the break, "What are you doing? What is that?" And he would show me, but I was looking at the wrong hand. It's here. It's this harmonic, that thing. And so after that, I thought, well, I need to move again because I'd gotten to a good spot in Colorado, but I felt like I need to move to where people are blowing my mind, and so I can get better, So after that, I moved to California.
How was that like for you? The beginning first weeks or years. I mean, did you immediately get in the scene? I mean, because I know you've done then tons of albums later, but like, how was the beginning?
I got lucky when I got out there. Max Bennett from the LA Express. I auditioned for the LA Express, and they were liking it, but Joni Mitchell was getting ready to go on the road. So, of course, Robin would want to do that. So he came back. But Max steered me to an audition they were doing over at A&M Records, which was the old Charlie Chaplin sound studio, this great, historic place. And they were auditioning for a guy named Sean Phillips, who was kind of a songwriter, soloist guy mostly. Really talented guy, and he would have bands from time to time, and they were getting a band together to go on the road. And I did the audition, and got the gig, and got to go on my first real, big showbiz road thing in the U.S., touring around the U.S. for a few months. Wow. And then, of course, didn't save my money and got home, and within 3 weeks I was completely broke. And I thought, well, maybe next time you should try to save some of that money. And then the guy from the Sean Phillips thing, this guy Peter Robinson, ended up calling me maybe 2 years later when I was just doing, because after that period there was nothing. It was like just a tumbleweeds and desert in my date book. There was no work from, we'd play a little bit with the Fowler band, but it was really hard, no money times. And about 2 years later, my friend Peter Robinson called me up and said, "Would you like to come and play with this group Brand X?" Which was Phil Collins's jazz offshoot, right, from Genesis. And I said, of course. So he said, well, the band's in London, but you and I should play. So I took a guitar over there, and he played acoustic piano, and I played guitar. He had given me a cassette to work up the material, to learn the material, and I did my homework, and we got done playing, and he says, yeah, I think that's good. I'll call the guys and tell them you're good for it.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay. So we're going to rehearse when we get there? No, we're going to go straight to the gig. So we went, actually to London, went to London, and then the first gig, we did a series of maybe 9 or 10 gigs around Europe. This is in 78.
Wow.
And these big festivals. They were giant festivals. It was like Zappa, McLaughlin, Genesis, Peter Gabriel, 10 years later, which was 10 years after, Alvin Lee, Joan Baez, these big all-day festivals. And we got to the first gig, and there were about 300,000 people camped there. And I'm getting up at 10 in the morning to play, and the band's not heard me play yet, and I'm going up to play on John Goodsell's his amp, his Marshall.
Yeah.
And they had no idea. Is this guy going to fold? Is he going to be okay? Is this going to, and we played, and I guess it was good enough they didn't call a rehearsal. They said, okay, good one.
Wow.
Went back to London, and we based out of there and played another, maybe 2 or 3 weeks worth of gigs around Europe. And then went back to the States and did like a US tour, at which point they had changed to having Mike Clark from the drummer for the Headhunters. Yeah, he came in to play drums.
Oh man, I didn't know.
So there I'm playing like the guy from the Headhunters, and then we finished that tour with Sean. Or when I finished the thing with Sean, he called me in to record his next record, and I go in and it's Paul Jackson and Mike Clark, and it's the Headhunters there. So I'm like running into these guys, actually, rubbing shoulders with these guys.
That's amazing.
So that's, I starved for a long time, and then I was never really in the mainstream of the the work, the LA work thing, like that whatever that thing is. I waited and bashed my head against that wall for a long time till but I was working with kind of other more fringe people. Gino Vanelli, Canadian singer.
Yeah, you played with him for a long time, right?
I played with him for like 11 years.
Wow.
But when I got the gig, he had been touring like big time.
He was really huge in the 80s. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
After Brother to Brother, they were playing stadiums, big places. And I got the gig, and he didn't play live for 11 years.
Wow.
And I strangle him because I was like, come on, let's play. And we put together a great band. We had a great band with Greg Bissonette and Jimmy Haslip. And,
oh, wow, man. Okay.
And we were going to tour, and they canceled for some reason. And it was 11 years till we finally toured.
Oh, man.
But, I'm not complaining. I learned a lot from those guys and got to, do a lot of recording with them. But that guy, and then I would work with, I was always on the kind of fringe. I was never in the mainstream of, hey, Quincy called, that stuff.
Yeah.
Never really happened for me. But there was enough other work that, and I just from being there and being willing to go play for free, you started making contacts, and I ended up playing with Benny Maupin, who was the bass clarinetist on.
How did that happen?
I forget. I think it was through a jam session or something, and somehow met some of the guys, and they had me come over and play, and played with Betty for a while. Mm-hmm. And so here I was like, now I'm playing with guys from Bitches Brew. These are like, the guys that made me want to play in the first place. And I started running into, and when I was in Colorado, another person I met was Bill Connors, who was the guitar player for the first one.
I love Bill Connors, man.
Yeah, Bill. And he was, we chatted and played some, and he came up to our house in the mountains, and one day he brought Stanley and Lenny up there. And they were at a club in Boulder. Like I just moved away from Dakota, and I get to Boulder, and there's this club in Boulder, and they have the first Return to Forever band with Bill for a week for $5. And I was there like every night and met the band, met Chick, met his manager, and
I already met him then.
So I kind of like started meeting, and the next week Ayrton was there with his Fingers band, the Brazilian band. So it was like, I knew I'd made a good move. It was like I was being, you want music? Here. It was like a big pile of music. It was great. So I kept running into these people, and with Chick, when I moved to California, after a few years, I was working with a guy named Alan Vizzuti, great trumpet player who had worked on, I think, maybe Leprechaun or some stuff, Tap Step, some of those Chick albums, and had the same manager as Chick. And one day we were recording, and in walks Chick, and Chick's going to sit on the recording. And so I'm like, recording with bloody Chick Corea, for God's sake. And then I kept running into him in other situations and auditioned for the first electric band. And I came in second, which means like nothing, which could almost buy you a cup of coffee, if you have a nickel too. And but the connection was there. And then many years later, I got called to audition for the second electric band.
Yeah.
And
I love the track or two.
Managed to get that one, but it's funny how these things happen over a long period of time, and you think, well, that's gone, that's never going to happen, and then something happens. Just have to be persistent.
Yeah. What was it like to play with Chick and that group? I mean, the music was so. I mean, it's so complex, I think, and
he was writing
and
very complex stuff at the time, and for me, I mean, he was one of the guys. I remember the day that I discovered CM Records, and I was playing with a group, and we were somewhere in Iowa, and this little record store had, they had Facing You, Keith Jarrett, and the first Return to Forever album, and maybe. And the Chick's piano improvisation record. I just bought everything I saw, and so he, I'd been listening to this guy since I was really young, and so it was like exciting, but really kind of scary to be playing, because you're up there, and you're playing this kind of blues kind of a song, and suddenly it's time to trade fours. And here comes Chick, and he's got a keyboard around his neck, and he's giving you that grin of his, and he's going to trade fours with you. And it was like, walking into an airplane propeller. It was like this guy's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. But it was really a great challenge and really exciting, and a major kick in the ass for me.
Amazing, yeah. Did you also lead bands already back then, like in the 80s and 90s, like your groups, or you did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a band with Tom Brechtline, who was another Chick alumni.
Yeah, sure. I love Tom.
Yeah, Tom and Jimmy Johnson was playing a lot, and a guy named Larry Klein was playing, who later married Joni Mitchell.
Yeah.
Which was that's like saying you married Bob Hope. It's like he was just gone. You know what I mean? It was like, yeah, I heard he's dating Joni Mitchell. But and so we had. I was leading and writing material then, because I started writing more actually original stuff with the Fowler Brothers. When I first came to California. So I was actively writing for that band, which was a great challenge because they were all so good. And there's 5 horns. So there's a lot, you want to do it, you have to really give them something worth, biting into.
Yeah. But you never recorded anything in that period, right? Or, I mean, nothing was released.
No, at that time, getting a record deal was not in the cards for me. It was like my music, I think, was too rocky for the jazz people, and it was too jazzy for the rock people, and it just never happened. I got a couple songs on other people's records. I have a song on the I think it's the second Yellow Jackets record, Mirage à Toi.
Oh yeah.
Called Elamar, and that was really exciting to get that out. And then they got nominated. What's that?
How did that happen?
Through Jimmy Haslett.
Okay.
my friend, a great drummer from my hometown back in Dakota, was Mark Cranny, who played drums on Gino's Brother to Brother record, and later went on to play for many years with John Ponte and Jethro Tull and all kinds of stuff. He was a great, great drummer. And he had come out to California right after me. He was also in Colorado. And I think he was working. Oh, there was another guy in Colorado I played with, Tommy Bolin.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
He was from a town in 60 miles from me in the Midwest. Really? And I didn't know him there, but I was always following him into gigs, which was kind of like good luck, kid. There's this guy who looks like a rock star with his blue hair, and he plays great. Everybody loves him. So let's see what you got. But Mark and Jimmy Haslip were playing at that time. I actually played with Tommy back. I was playing bass back in Boulder a little bit. Yeah. But then in California, Mark and Jimmy Haslip were playing with Tommy on the road. They were actually out on the road when he died, when he drug overdose. Not to go there, but and so Jimmy. Let me think. What were we chasing down?
How that tune ended on the Yellow Jackets record.
That's how the Yellow Jackets came out. Because Jimmy had been doing the Yellow Jackets, and it was kind of Robin Ford's band.
Yeah.
And so I had that. We knew some of those people, and and Robin left, or they decided to move on as the Jackets. And the second record, I played a few gigs with them. And I had this song, and they seemed to like it, so got it on their record, and they got a Grammy nomination that year. It's just going to be smooth sailing from now on, but. There you are.
Oh yeah, I think I lost you for a second.
You froze for a second after that.
Let me see.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, but I wanted to ask you, how did then because the first one I heard you was like "World Goes Round." Is that your first record then, or? Like in the band leading department?
The first record I did was, what was it? I think it was Save the Moon.
Oh, okay. Shit, I have to find that one.
The Moon, and I got like Peter Erskine to play some, and Breck Line and Ralph Humphrey played, and big cast.
Okay, I have to find that one.
Save the Moon, and it was self-published. It was not a label, and I actually did some other songwriting for the Fowler Brothers. There's a song called "Here I Go Again" that was on there, an album called Hunter of theirs. But my own stuff, yeah, I did that one. Trying to think what others, and World Goes Round and Trust. And
I love World Goes Round. It's such a great record, man. I listened to it today. I love the tunes there. It's such good music. Really cool tunes.
Thanks.
Yeah, and you and Chad, like I love. I mean, Chad and Jimmy are obviously that's like a dream rhythm section, like.
Yeah.
For your
sometimes
music.
I've had the experience of I've got new material, and I'll come over and they'll play the material, and I go, "Oh, that's how it's supposed to go," because it's like I can go so far with this thing myself, but when you're playing with people who've been, playing on that level for decades, they're going to bring things to it that I would never think of.
Mm.
So it's nice to, remain open to that gift.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Who are your, otherwise your guitar, guitar heroes, or I'll put it like guitarists that you checked out, like in jazz-wise?
I think probably my biggest influence was John McLaughlin,
yeah.
Because of how he changed things. fact, I remember hearing an album that John said that I don't think he made a nickel off of it ever. It was called Devotion.
Mhm.
He had Buddy Miles playing drums, and I think Larry Young maybe playing organ.
Organ, yeah.
And there was something I had never heard guitars sound like that. And it was like, it changed my playing kind of overnight. I just thought, I didn't know that you could play something was kind of scary and dark. You know what I mean? Everything I was hearing was very clean and, pristine and all these great, very exacting things. And here was this other thing that was really just popped my eyes open. So he was a great influence. But of course, Hendrix, Jeff Beck, George Benson.
Interesting. Well,
like I went to Pat Martino. In fact, I remember like early on back in Dakota where you had to really work to find music, because if the more obscure stuff, it wasn't being played on the radio. So I'd heard a record by a guy named Eric Kloss, the saxophone.
Yeah. And Benson plays on it. Yeah, exactly. I think. Yeah.
And I heard this record, and it was, and it had these two amazing players, Chick Corea and Pat Martino. And I flipped out and I went to the store and I said, what other records have you got with these guys? And I just bought them, just like laid the money down and had them mailed, because it was like, it was like being a detective. You had to find this stuff. It wasn't like, YouTube's nice and stuff, but it's too easy.
It's
the
true.
fact that you
It's true.
stuff, it just seems like yeah, what else is on, but you had to really like go after things. So Martino and Benson and guys like Christopher Parkening and Julian Bream.
A
lot of, I was really interested in styles. Why do these things sound the way they sound? So I became a big fan and Zappa, of course. I loved his stuff. I was playing around that time. Burnt Weenie Sandwich and that stuff. Really great long line guitar, like these solos that were like a long narrative. To me, like a great solo is like a story.
Yeah.
Not just the flash. It's like it's got a beginning and a middle and an end. So I went through phases of listening to many guitar players, but I think I was even more enamored with keyboards.
Really interesting.
Oscar Peterson and then of course the big three, Joe Zawinul, Chick, and Keith Jarrett.
Yeah, sure.
It's always been like I probably, has moved me more than anybody I can think. As far as he probably would not want to have a nice conversation with me, but I don't expect him to. You know what I mean? Anyone who's had that kind of like life where you've been thousands of people coming to see you since you were 16, they're not just going to be a regular guy too. I don't know how you could. Maybe you could.
Oh yeah.
It was pretty regular in a lot of ways. But so I was just rabid with like Jarrett and George Duke, Jan Hammer. For a long time, I used to say Jan Hammer is my favorite guitar player because it sounded like a guitar.
Oh man, the records with Abercrombie, that stuff, I love that stuff.
Yeah, his own stuff, and it was like. In fact, I saw the Mahavishnu Orchestra probably in '71 or something we had to drive, and being in Dakota, if you wanted to see live music, you had to 6-7 hours to get somewhere. So we drove to Minneapolis and went to the Mahavishnu show, but we didn't have, what was it? I think we didn't have tickets. We're trying to find scalp tickets. And we're hanging out by the stage door, and all of a sudden this car door opens and a puff of smoke, and out walks Jerry Goodman. And you go, oh my God, you guys are the best thing that ever fell out of a tree, And he said, well, you want to come in and watch sound check? Yes, we do. So we walk in and we're standing right behind Billy with my friend Mark Cran. and we're watching Billy, and who's like the most scary powerhouse thing you ever saw. And all day before then, I'd been hearing him. You could hear him playing inside the hall, and here goes McLaughlin just frying, and there was this other guitar player. And I thought, who the hell is that? That guy's incredible. And they said that Santana was hanging around. I thought, doesn't sound like Santana, but maybe. And then we saw that night that it was Hammer.
Yeah.
I was always, there's something about keyboards, and it's always like also with comping, the idea that, keyboards, you get these figures going, where a lot of guitar playing, comping, very scratching away on a chord, which can be very great and appropriate, but I admired what keys could do. So I always worked on, how can I get some of that? How can I put some of that off,
Yeah. No, when I listen to you now, I mean, especially your own records, you have your own sound, and which is beautiful, right?
That'd be nice.
Yeah, I don't know, or at least compositionally, when I listen to you, it's especially in the fusion world or whatever world, music world. You know, it's already when you moved to LA, it must have been crazy. All these amazing guitarists being there, only on the West Coast, and then the East Coast is there, and then Europe, Holdsworth coming and blah blah blah, and all this stuff is just like it's insane what was happening then.
Yeah, that guy. Oof.
Have you ever seen him live? You probably did, right?
Yes, a few times.
Yeah.
I met him through Jimmy and Chad, and really very nice guy, really self-depreciating too. Like, you just want to smack him. He'd get off stage and he just blew your mind completely and said, "I suck tonight. I'm just this is terrible. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? If that sucked, I should quit. I should just go jump in the ocean right now." But he certainly changed everything.
Yeah, interesting. Jimmy Haslip told me many stories. Like, I was like, man, crazy. Like,
and so Alan was a huge influence. Not so much that I want to play like that, because good luck, but also like you'd kind of like, it's like when I got to do I love Mike Stern's playing, but I got called to do a thing that was at a college where they had a bunch of Mike Stern songs where they harmonized his solos. And I thought, this is great, but it's kind of similar to the Zappa thing that I do. With guys, that the best you can do is almost measure up. The best you might, because with the Frank stuff, it'd be like, if you made mistakes playing the Zappa stuff, it was like, well, we understand. Don't feel bad. It's really hard. We understand that you made mistakes. But if you pulled it off perfectly and really nailed it, they'd go, wasn't Frank great? You know what I mean? You couldn't win. And it was the same way with the Mike Stern stuff, because it's like, I love Mike's playing, but you can't, if you're just going to ape what somebody else did, then that's going to be what you do.
True.
And I'm guilty as anybody about doing that too. I got away with a lot of things because I from playing with my father at an early age, and just being exposed to music and the way things were explained to me, I worked on my ears a lot as far as ear training before I even knew what it was. Back when I was playing with my father's band, they would take a break and they'd all go to the bar, and the piano player, who was my father's age, would stay up on the bandstand and do little puzzles. Like, he'd play an E and he'd play an F up here and he'd play an A right up there, and I'd go, what's that chord? And do little just ear training things and get you to hear things and pick out what was what, and explaining about, how a 13th chord is built and things like stuff that they didn't get to in school for me for 10 years later. So, I spent a lot of time working on, I have what I tell people, I have imperfect pitch because it drifts. but I'm pretty, I have a certain facility for picking out phrases, which can be really handy, like in a recording session.
Yeah.
Like I was doing a thing when I auditioned for Boss Skaggs, which is, I love doing this gig, is that we went in and we're playing and it's just me and the bass and tracks and Boss. And I'm playing this song the way I feel it should be played. And they go, oh, actually, no, there's a different guitar part. I go, what is it? Because there were 4 or 5 guitarists. So, I said, well, what is it? And they would go, it's like this. It goes like, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so the ability to hear it and immediately play it back for them, that's a huge thing,
Yep.
I mean, people they think you're magic or something, but it's like identifying colors, It's like the difference between this red and this red. It's, it's very similar to that kind of thing. And I think people get the idea that you either you have it or you don't. And I think you can develop it. You can really vastly improve that stuff by working on it. I mean, the great thing about music is if you put in the time, you get results. And there's not a lot of things in life that are like that.
Yeah. It's like sight reading is the same, right? It's another aspect, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like
working at it and
it's like, well, I can't read. I've gone to things where people will say, I can't read. So here's how the song goes. Because I'd bring a chart and they say, well, I can't read, but here's how I'd like it to go. You do the intro. And then there's the first verse. And it goes back for a second verse, but then there's a half intro. And after that's a chorus. And then we do a half of a verse and we go to the bridge. And I'm like, this is way more complicated than you just learning to read a little bit. But because sometimes people will say, well, if you learn to read, it really kills your feel. And it's like, that sounds like you're saying that Mark Twain was not a good storyteller because he wrote it down. That's
exactly. Yeah.
And you can go overboard on either one,
Yeah.
See people who they're good at one style and then something that throws them off, they avoid it for the rest of their lives. And so you're very if it gets outside of your comfort zone, you're really kind of lost. And I always worked on trying to figure out to expand that to where, I'm still not a great I can work things out and read some complicated stuff, but it takes me time to get it through the bone here.
Interesting, because you've played on so much complicated music. I wanted to ask you about Vinnie also, Colaiuta and Charisma and all that experience, because talking about complicated music. And how did you end up there on those projects?
Well, Vinnie, I met doing the first record I did with Gino Vanelli.
Ah, okay. Oh yeah.
I used to run into him at a club here in town. It was the Baked Potato. Mm-hmm. And Vinnie was playing there with this group Charisma, and they were there every week, and I was there every week too. Just Vinnie would do some of those fills, and I would just be laughing hysterically, like, that's impossible. That's really, I think he misunderstood me one day. He says, "Why are you laughing?" I says, "You." What do you mean? No, it's so great, but so I'd worked with Gino with Vinnie with Gino, but it was very controlled. It was, these are the songs. We're doing these songs. It wasn't like blowing. It was like, these are the songs. So I knew him from that, and then I went to the NAMM show one year, and Vinnie was there, and I said hello, and he out of the blue said, "Hey, what are you doing next week? Would you like to record on this album?" I was like, "Yes, I would like to record with you on your album. Yes." And I think I did it at his house, maybe. I think so.
Amazing.
Which is right over there. There used to be. He moved recently, but yeah. So it's the connections, just the strange, odd connections that you think nothing's going to happen. Like when I auditioned for Chick, I did the audition. And I think a lot of people went out for the gig. I think a lot of people auditioned, and I didn't hear anything back for like 3 months. So I figured, well, that's gone. I gave it a good try. I did my best, and then I got the call. Okay, you're on. We start Monday. Ready to go? And it was, yeah. So I don't know. You just have to, like we said earlier, they have to find something in music that you really love. Yeah. Because otherwise the disappointments will break you. They'll break your heart and make you want to quit. And a lot of people do. Sometimes, and I think that can be hard. That can be a big challenge in itself to keep a healthy love for it and not, because the auditions that I got, yeah, that's great. But there's so many auditions I went to that I did not get the gig. Yeah. Tons where I thought I really did a good job. George Duke had a band with, I think it was Alphonso Johnson, and maybe Billy Cobham, I think it was Ndugu. I think it was after Billy. But I went in there and I knew some of the more complicated Zappa stuff that George had been playing on and played it. And he was like, ooh. And at first audition I went to, there were like 30, 40 guys there, 40 guitar players. I finally got up to play at the end of the day. And we played some of the, other stuff. And then I pulled that out and he says, oh yeah, you know that? And we start playing and he was like, oh, that's really great. So I go home and I got called back to do another audition. So I thought, oh, great. You go in there, be 5 guys. You can really dig in because I only got to play about 12 minutes, I go back to the second one. There's 50 guitar players. So, I didn't get it. But then later on, it came around again where suddenly I got called to do some gigs with George.
Oh, wow.
And, with Michael McDonald and Al Jarreau somewhere in, in the Caribbean. And then George had me play a little bit, some on his, one of his albums. And I remember being at George's place doing some recording for, I think, Marilyn Scott, this great, great singer. And the band is like Vinnie, Restaurante, and then Duke comes out and he starts playing that piano, and I'm going, that's the piano from 200 Motels. And I think Brian Bromberg was playing bass. It was a great, great band. And I'm feeling all like, oh man, these guys are so good. And I had a thought in my head that was like, they didn't call you here because they need to have a super fan.
Yeah.
They actually called you to play guitar. Yeah. And so you should pull that crap out of your head because it's bullshit. And it's like it's wrong. And, so I tried to do that. But it can be hard when you're like playing with people that you like idolize. Yeah. Or not idolize exactly, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
They've like this, some of the reasons I play is because of like Chick. So to actually play with him, it was like incredibly intimidating.
Yeah, it's heavy. I remember years ago, I played a lot with Paul McCandless, from Oregon.
Yeah, sure.
And great. I remember the first gig I did with him, I was like, man, I have him like on 30 records, and now, here's this kind guy like playing. Yeah, I'm sorry, I screwed up the head there. I was like, Jesus, man, like, this is Paul McCandless, and we're here, and he's so humble exactly. and like, man.
Right, that's exactly it. I did a thing the other day was by kind of a bunch of really great players. A guy named David Garfield, this piano player.
Oh man, I love from Charisma.
Yeah, he had kind of a 50th anniversary of him being out here playing music, and he had like John Robinson, Jr. and Eric Marienthal, who I hadn't seen in a long time, and a great Lenny Castro and this great band. And somebody came up with a picture of me and John Schofield. And I knew exactly where it was because he goes, this is at a lake. And I go, yeah, in Japan at Mount Fuji, because that's the only time I spent a lot of time with him. And I remember very distinctly that there was a jam session and I get up to play, and it's Bill Stewart playing drums and Chick and Chaka Khan and John Schofield and me. And I'm going, how did they let me up here? But it's like you're here to do a job. Find out where John's not playing and go down there, do something down there, and try to contribute something musical to it. Because it can be a challenge. You get so carried away in all the stuff I've been working on in the garage. I got to play all this stuff, every song, instead of thinking, what can I contribute to the song?
Yeah, it's heavy.
Really, it's a great different kind of challenge,
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, was the session recorded by someone? Like if it was like nowadays, like that would be on YouTube everywhere, I guess. But
it might be somebody
man.
must. It was probably pre-cell phones. They might have probably have footage there because it was a big festival at Mount Fuji, but it was a long time ago.
It's like these loft sessions, from the 70s in New York. Like when people told me, like, like Dijonette was playing there, and there's Dave Holland and 4 saxophone players. Like, I don't know, there's Bob Burke and Mincer and those guys, and you're like, man, okay.
Yeah.
I wish I was a fly there, or whatever.
Yeah, there was a thriving scene there.
Yeah. But
I almost moved there, but I just never quite,
to the East Coast?
I thought about it at one point.
Oh shit, Mike, I lost you, I think.
But
okay.
Thanks for.
You're back. Yeah. Oh, I think I'm losing you. Let's see. You hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Oh, okay.
The picture froze.
Oh, okay. Mike, not to take too much of your time, I just wanted to ask you, like, what's still on the schedule for you for the upcoming months or weeks, or touring-wise, or playing-wise?
I did this thing the other night with kind of all-star band down at with David Garfield. Chad played that thing too. Going to play with my band with Chad and Mitch Foreman on the 19th here. I'm playing with a great singer. She's gonna be mad if I can't think of her name. Janice Mann, really great singer. And the band from Utopia playing the Zappa stuff, also down at the Potato. And otherwise, I'm just doing a lot of home recording. Okay. Not a lot of touring. And normally I would be out with Bus Gags for the summer, but this year he didn't go. They're talking about next year might be busier, but I did go up and record with him a couple of weeks ago. So it's all kind of, like a juggling act,
Yeah.
I get enough things going, then maybe when they all fall through, but I'll have one thing to do.
Any plans of coming to Europe, or?
I would love to go to Europe and play. I wish that I'd started earlier on to just come over there and play and try to generate some interest. And I went last year with the Utopia guys, the Zappa guys. We did like a little run through Scandinavia, and I'm hoping that comes back around too. That I might be able to do some more of that stuff. But I haven't been for a while. I've been going a couple times to just like go and not work. That's a treat,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, let me know if next time you're around, like in Slovenia. I mean, we have a guest room here. It's a wine country, so you're kindly invited. Come and hang. You can play.
Thank you so much. Then.
Whatever. So if you're, just let me know. I
would love to do that. That sounds really exciting.
If you like white wine, then you're in heaven. But yeah.
That's great. Sounds beautiful.
But anyway, man, thanks so much for sharing some of these thoughts.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be.
Really appreciate it.
Dr. Jazz.